Police in Portland, Oregon declared a riot overnight.
Another night of violence in Portland.
You take a look at what's gone on in Portland. This city is in shambles to this day.
We've had a lot of negative press. Changing the perception is the greatest challenge the city has.
I think it's a bullshit narrative. Jackasses from New York Times love to drop into the city and say it's a dumpster fire without actually talking to anybody who lives in the city on a daily basis.
It takes time to overcome systemic challenges, and it's how we as a city are going to respond to it.
I feel like we've lost our way a little bit. A lot of things definitely need to change. For sure, the homelessness, the drug issues that we have, just not knowing, what our government is doing.
They're not getting rid of the problems. Portland have the nicest people in the world. We're too nice at this point.
This is a very progressive and positive place. And I thought it was going to continue to go in that direction, and it just started to fall apart. That's probably about laws and leadership.
These officials aren't really completing what they're promising or really pushing for a change.
I don't hear us talking about it. There's no transparency with the general public about what's going on to solve the issues.
We're a growing city, and I think with anything that's growing and changing, there's always growing pains. I believe that Portland can be its glorious self.
You've heard the headlines. Now we've taken to the streets to hear you.
Giving a voice to the people of Portland and getting you the answers you deserve. Welcome to Be Seen, Be Heard Portland. I'm Shauna Parsons.
And I'm Pete Ferryman. This is a new long-term initiative here at Fox 12. We want to drown out the noise from the national discourse and go straight to you to hear your concerns about the city we love.
So we spent several weeks this year working on a simple concept: set up open mics all around the Portland metro area, ask simple questions, and let you sound off.
We ended up with hours of interviews, many bringing up the same issues again and again. Our goal, bridge the gap.
Take your voices from Portland street corners to the corner offices of local leaders and those who can affect change.
Tonight is just the starting point where we begin to get answers to the questions that you raise the most.
It's no secret that issues with law enforcement have really become synonymous with Portland.
We defunded the police department. At the same time, fentanyl you can carry on the street. You can't have these two combinations and not expect trouble. You can't expect taking the gun task force out and expect for shootings to lower.
I saw police telling off some kids for having loud music the other day. There's so many other things you could be worrying about.
It's really disturbing as a parent, as a community member, to see the amount of crime and nothing being done about it. We need to have a system that's supportive of the community, but also supportive of the law enforcement, and where the law enforcement wants to be involved with the community and help make it a better place.
We definitely need to impose some far more stringent regulations on activities of unhoused individuals.
There's this element of criminalizing poverty. They don't want to build a shelter for homeless people, but they don't want to camp in their backyard, but they don't want to put them anywhere. We just have a bunch of city leaders who want to do nothing. We have a bunch of cops deciding we're not going to do our jobs. But the story is that there's a bunch of crazy drug addicts running around the city stabbing everybody.
You spoke, we listened, and so did the newly appointed chief of police. People of Portland clearly want to be seen and be heard. What is your response to what you saw there?
Well, I think that response really encompasses a lot of how Portlanders are feeling. I mean, that's a pretty good overall representation. One of the reasons that I considered returning to this position was because of the deeply held belief by many Portlanders that we can be better and we should be better. So, I'm glad to see that people are participating in the conversation.
Many Portlanders we heard from pointed to 2020 as the turning point, expressing concern about an overcorrection in the criminal justice system to appease protesters. And we've seen multiple cases where someone is arrested for a felony, only to end up back on the streets, maybe a day or two later, recommitting the same crime. How is that tenable? I mean, how do you deal with that going forward?
When we talk about the system, we talk about the criminal justice system, we need to talk about it as a system, right? So the police are the entry point into that system. Nothing happens if the police don't start it. And then we pass it off to the courts, to the judges, to the DAs, to the, parole and probation, et cetera. And that's all Multnomah County. Because of the visibility of the police and because of the significance of our role, I understand why we get the attention that we get. Rightly so. I'm not saying that we are not part of this, but we need to have the whole conversation, and the whole conversation means challenging the county on their responsibilities as well.
Yeah, some of the comments we heard insinuated that police officers are intentionally not doing their jobs, avoiding certain areas.
Do you want to set the record straight there?
Yeah, well, certainly my expectation is that we get a full day's work out of every member of the Portland Police Bureau. And my message to each of them is to be the very best where you are at that time. The reality is that, you know, the scope of work we're being asked to do is obviously growing. The challenging types of calls have become far more complex. So there are some things that are making it more difficult for us to be as timely and responsive as we want to be. But there's no room for officers or any member of the police bureau, myself included, to just check out. We're public servants. That's the expectation. And so my hope and belief is that they are, and if they're not, then we will address that, I can assure you.
Multnomah County Deputy DA Nathan Vasquez also took time to hear your comments. He's running in the upcoming election against incumbent District Attorney Mike Schmidt and says the county needs to change course.
What is your response to what residents are saying?
That's why I'm here, is that I'm hearing their voices, I'm hearing their concerns, and first and foremost, I'm trying to validate that and say, look, I see where you're feeling unsafe, and I see these issues and problems, and I see really where there's this feeling like, where's the leadership?
The mayor and your opponent say that Portland is moving in the right direction when it comes to public safety.
I do not believe that is the feeling of the everyday person here in Multnomah County. I try to stay to really the hard facts, and what I'm still seeing is record levels of homicides, record levels of violent crime.
Both Vasquez and Day agree that the key is to look forward.
There may be problems, but there are also opportunities, right?
Yes, yes. And I'm all about seizing those opportunities. What keeps me up at night is we're going to miss this chance. Like, we have a chance right now, and I don't want to miss it. We've been on the cover of the New York Times twice this past year, both negatively. I want to see us a year from now with a story of the cover of the New York Times. Look at how Portland turned it around. And they turned it around in collaboration with law enforcement and other community partners. So for as long as I'm here and as long as I'm in this role, I'm going to push for that.
Our thanks to Chief Day and Nathan Vasquez for taking the time to talk to us. By the way, I did reach out to current DA Mike Schmidt's office several weeks ago. His team said he would not be available for an interview for this story.
Well, when it comes to crime, there is a lot of confusion about where Portland really stands.
Everyone says Portland's so crazy. I think it got a lot of news attention with the protests and stuff. It doesn't feel like so insanely dangerous.
While crime is up since 2020, it's important to compare Portland to other West Coast cities. Portland actually has one of the lower violent crime rates.
But when it comes to property crime, Portland ranks right near the top, with some of the highest rates in America for motor vehicle and other thefts.
You can't talk about Portland's crime problem without talking about the explosion of drug addiction on our streets and how Oregon decriminalized drug use several years ago.
So many people we talked to had such strong opinions and questions about how the move really changed the place we live and how to move forward.
We sent our Fox 12 investigative reporter Ezra Kaplan out to get some answers.
Drugs is one of the biggest issues right now, but they're really not addressing the addiction behind it.
We've just taken the wrong steps, and I see why they did it. Overcrowding of jails and simple drug charges, but when you're rolling around with heroin or fentanyl, it's not a simple drug charge. That's a different thing than walking around with a joint.
I don't think we should recriminalize drugs. I don't think that the way that we decriminalize them has worked, but recriminalizing them is not the answer.
No one should be allowed to use out in the open. Sometimes I want to take my son out for a walk, and I don't want him exposed to things that he's never seen before and shouldn't see.
If you can arrest him and put him in a prison, why can't you put them in a rehab facility? I think there's some backwards thinking and there's some problems within the system that need to be changed. It does take resources and time, but what's the other solution?
Obviously, 110 was an incredible failure. I didn't vote for it, even though I'm an ex-drug addict. What we've got here is a pharmaceutical industrial complex, and we have these institutions who are making money off keeping people doped up and sick. What I would say to the leaders, you're not doing the right thing. You're just creating more problems to keep the funding going.
What are your initial thoughts? I mean, anything stand out to you?
The urgency that I heard from them was really something that we felt in the legislature. We have 5 people a day dying on the streets of Portland. It's unacceptable. And that's really one of the reasons that you saw us come together in a bipartisan manner and put forth a whole package of bills that is to address the drug crisis.
That bill ended the experiment of drug decriminalization brought on by Measure 110, which Oregon voters approved in 2020. Senator Kate Lieber is the majority leader in Salem and sponsored the recriminalization bill.
I would say that one of the failures of this was we did not have the treatment in place that needed to be in place in order for decriminalization to work the way that I think the advocates really wanted it to work. It wasn't because it was a bad idea. We weren't ready. It will become, again, a crime to possess drugs on September 1st.
Right. Now,
any amount of drugs.
In the lead up to that, what's being done to get ready? Because Measure 110 seems to have caught the state quite off guard. There were a lot of things that weren't ready to handle the resources that were needed. What's being done now to get ready for this change in law?
So when we, you get to remember when 110 was passed, it did start a flow of money into services that are now just getting up and running. So we do have those services coming online.
Under the new law, those who are arrested for possessing drugs will have the option of getting treatment instead of being booked into jail. But advocates who oppose the recriminalization say the underlying problem is still unresolved. Is there going to be enough treatment resources available when that happens to accommodate the demand?
No, not even close.
Tara Hurst is the executive director of Health Justice Recovery Alliance, which represents a coalition of Oregon recovery service providers in support of Measure 110.
You know, we won't have enough services to divert people to. And I think another thing that's really important as we have these conversations is currently in Oregon, if you're a Spanish-speaking female, there are no services for you.
None.
None. So if you get arrested and they say, but we're offering you treatment, there's no treatment for them.
The explosion of fentanyl has complicated the issue further.
You can't take somebody just from the street and put them into residential treatment. They need to start at detox. We are so woefully developed in our detox system in Oregon. And what we know is that Hooper Detox down in downtown Portland, they turn away hundreds of people a month who want it.
Portland only has 3 detox facilities, the newest one opening last year with Measure 110 funding. There are 106 detox beds in Portland, only half of what the Oregon Health Authority says is needed to support demand.
We don't have enough drug treatment. That is a true statement. We are expanding it, and we're expanding it quickly.
But for Portlanders, it's just not working fast enough. What do you say to folks who hear everything you're saying and see what you're doing in Salem, but are not seeing the results back at home?
So it's going to take time. And I think it's important to understand that we're chasing a sort of a tsunami of fentanyl. What's happened in Portland is not unique to Portland. It's really happening in many places across the country, and every jurisdiction is grappling with it.
In a city begging for an immediate solution, those in power are playing the long game and asking for patience along the way.
There's no question drugs are fueling another giant problem that many of you wanted to talk about, Portland's homeless crisis.
When we come back, we're taking your questions right to the people who are working hard on solutions.